Christians fleeing Iraq by the thousands. How the faithful are dealing with violence and war.
A pro-life group wins at the Supreme Court. I'm Jason Calvi. I'll have that story coming up.
Pope Francis had a busy weekend. We'll tell you what he was up to and where he'll be headed in the next few months. And the newly crowned Miss USA tells about what it was like to win and how she draws strength from her faith. All this and more tonight on EWTN News Nightly for Monday, June 16th, 2014. Good evening from Washington. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. We begin looking at news now. The White House is considering sending special forces to Iraq in an urgent attempt to help Baghdad slow that nation's rampant Sunni insurgency. President Barack Obama has explicitly ruled out deploying U.S. combat troops to Iraq. He plans, though, or his plan suggests he is willing to put Americans in a training role to help address collapsing security. Speaking anonymously, U.S. officials said only about 100 Special Forces soldiers could deploy to advise Iraqi troops. The al-Qaeda-inspired militant insurgency represents the worst threat to the Shiite-led government since the American military left in 2011. Well, as that fighting continues and intensifies, tens of thousands of Iraqis are fleeing the violence. Wyatt Goolsby reports tonight on the diminishing number of Christians in the region. Wyatt, just how bad is it?
Well, Brian, this recent outbreak has absolutely ripped apart many communities, including Eastern Rite Catholics, Chaldeans, Armenians, and Syrians. Some church officials say the number of Christians is down to less than 500,000 in the entire country. Many are turning to their faith as they have to leave everything else behind. Dozens of families are adding their voices to prayers at the Chaldean Church of the Virgin Mary of the Harvest. The small community north of Mosul in Al-Qush has been welcoming displaced Christians to Mass, some with nowhere else to go.
They all have fear, panic, and despair in their hearts regarding their future.
Amid chaos, Christians have been emptying out of already tiny communities in the biblical land of Nineveh, modern-day Mosul.
We were afraid of the situation as Christians because we are a minority in the country. But now the crisis is greater than before and spreading everywhere.
Like many who have fled, Danny does not want to show her face out of fear for her safety. Counterterrorism expert Dr. Sebastian Gorka says that's with good reason. The militants, who are Sunni Muslims, are targeting anyone who opposes them, especially non-Muslims.
To quote Adrian White, the vicar of Baghdad, the violence occurring right now in Iraq is worse than anything that has occurred in the last 10 years. So the Christians are paying the highest price in this region, Iraq included.
Gorka says the wider ideological battle, including the Sunni-Shia divide, has forced minorities out and destroyed any chance of economic stability. He says things will get worse before they get better. On Sunday, Pope Francis encouraged the faithful to pray for Iraq, especially its Christians, a sign of solidarity for a country torn apart by violence. Since the militants took control of Mosul last week, they have vowed to impose their Islamist agenda. But Brian, some reports show that the terrorists have already killed dozens of non-Sunni Muslims in addition to other religious minorities.
Wyatt will continue to pray for those minorities. Thank you. And now some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. The U.S. Supreme Court rules unanimously for a pro-life group. It's a big win tonight for the Susan B. Anthony List, an organization that promotes pro-life politicians. Our Jason Calvi is at the High Court this evening with more on that decision. Jason?
Well, Brian, all of the justices agree that the Susan B. Anthony List can fight an Ohio elections law. That law bans lies during the campaign cycle. But the question is, well, who determines what's a truth and what's false? The Ohio Elections Commission, according to the state law. Now, back in 2010, the Susan B. Anthony List, a pro-life organization, wanted to put up this billboard. But the former Representative Steve Driehaus said the group was lying. He lodged a complaint with the Ohio Elections Commission, and the threat itself stopped the billboard company from posting this ad. The Susan B. Anthony List tried to fight the law. Lower courts stopped them. Now the Supreme Court says the group can indeed fight the law. In the ruling today, Justice Clarence Thomas says Susan B. Anthony List had to choose between not speaking on the one hand, and on the other hand, the risk of prosecution and large legal bills. The Supreme Court decision quoted Ohio's Attorney General. He said the practical effect of the Ohio law is to let one making a complaint gain a campaign advantage without having to prove the statement is a lie. Now, we just moments ago spoke with the president of the Susan B. Anthony List on today's ruling. What does today's victory mean for your group?
It's vital for the pro-life movement and the Susan B. Anthony List. It's also vital for the voter. The Susan B. Anthony List and Congressman Driehaus, the Catholic Church, the Republican Party, argued from the very beginning of this debate that unless there was an amendment in the health care law to stop abortion funding, there would be abortion funding in health care, and that is the case right now. Congressman Driehaus agreed with us and then changed his mind. Therefore, we work to defeat him. It's also vital for the voter. Our organization and others need to feel free, without fear, to move into the public space, communicate directly, and criticize public officials directly without fear of imprisonment or fines.
The Supreme Court decision today, just a first step. The Susan B. Anthony List lawyers tell me they plan to file papers this week for a preliminary injunction stopping the Ohio campaign law. That'll be the next step in this ongoing battle. And the Susan B. Anthony List tells me they hope to have those billboards, similar billboards, up in Ohio this fall. Brian?
All right, Jason Calvi at the Supreme Court. Thank you, Jason. The White House announced today President Obama will sign an executive order that stops federal contractors from discriminating against employees based on their sexual orientation. Until now, the president had resisted signing the order, hoping Congress would pass a broader non-discrimination measure. As that becomes more unlikely, he took the step that he took today. Police today arrested a suspect for last week's attack in Phoenix that left a priest dead and another critically injured. 56-year-old Gary Michael Moran is being held on suspicion of first-degree murder, burglary, armed robbery, as well as other charges. He was released from prison in April after serving about 8 years. The priests were attacked at the Mother of Mercy mission Wednesday night. 29-year-old Father Ken Walker was shot and killed. The pastor of the mission, Father Joseph Terra, was badly beaten. He remains hospitalized tonight, but is expected to make a full recovery. A group with links to al-Qaeda is claiming responsibility for the deaths of 48 people in Kenya. The group, Al-Shabaab, began the attack last night as people were watching the World Cup. Gunmen went door to door asking if the men inside were Muslim and if they spoke Somali. Witnesses say the Muslims were spared. The gunmen also attacked the town's police station, set 2 hotels on fire, and then sprayed bullets into the streets. Today, Kenya's government defended that country's recent security record.
I wish to assure the country of the government's commitment to deal with political incitement and caution political leaders inciting the public to desist from destructive politics and ethnic profiling that may be responsible for this heinous act.
Al-Shabaab says the attack came in response to the brutal oppression of Muslims in Kenya, to use their words. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko met with key ministers on his security defense teams today to discuss a peace plan for his nation. He called the meeting after sobering developments this past weekend. A Ukrainian military plane was shot down Saturday. All 49 crew members and troops on board died. Poroshenko said the council would discuss the possibility of a ceasefire. In Israel, the search continues for 3 missing teenagers. The Israeli government believes they were kidnapped by the terrorist group Hamas. Naftali Frankel, an Israeli-American, was hitchhiking home from a school with 2 friends late last week when all 3 disappeared. The boy's aunt spoke with reporters about her nephew and the furious search for him and his friends.
He has a great combination of being a serious kid, taking things serious, a good student. We really, really want to see him home fast. We miss him and we love him, but we know and we believe that the Israeli authorities, the police and the army and the intelligence and everyone are doing the utmost that could be done at this moment.
Frankel was born and raised in Israel, but is also an American citizen. Family members and synagogues in the U.S. have held vigils showing their support since he disappeared. Pope Francis continues reaching out to other Christian confessions. Today in the Vatican, he met with the Anglican Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. The Pope said he hoped their meeting would serve to strengthen their friendship and commitment to reconciliation. The audience came on the 2nd day of the Anglican leader's visit to Rome. He brought gifts for the Pope. They took time to pray together silently. The two also pledged to fight human trafficking, which they describe as one of the most devastating and crippling problems facing the world today. This was their second meeting since both were elected within days of one another last year. And Pope Francis told a group today that the world of finance must serve the interests of people and the common good. He addressed a symposium on investing for the poor at the Vatican. He criticized an economy which excludes and discards. The meeting was sponsored by the Pontifical Council of Justice and Peace, Catholic Relief Services, and the University of Notre Dame's Mendoza College of Business. Well, his was one of the world's best-known radio voices. Casey Kasem died Sunday morning. He was 82. The legendary broadcaster hosted American Top 40. He was also the voice of Shaggy on the cartoons or the show Scooby-Doo. As a disc jockey, he led the country through disco and punk, arena rock, and even rap. At the end of his shows, he would always sign off with his signature advice: keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Casey Kasem suffered from a form of dementia the last years of his life. Firefighters are using air tankers and helicopters to battle a California wildfire. They're expecting to make progress on the blaze before hotter, drier weather kicks in later this week. The wildfire is threatening homes in southern Sierra Nevada and west of Lake Isabella. Authorities are urging about 1,000 families to leave their homes until that fire is under control. Meanwhile, Europe's most active volcano continues to erupt. It's a spectacular sight. Look at the hot lava and ash spewing from Mount Etna on the island of Sicily. Mount Etna started erupting again Saturday night. Coming up, Pope Francis had a busy weekend. We'll tell you what he did and where he went. And we'll talk with Alan Holdren in Rome about what's coming up for the Holy Father in the next few months. This is from Pope Francis' official Twitter feed today. He says, "May the Lord bless the family and strengthen it in this moment of crisis." We thank you for joining us for EWTN News Nightly on this Monday, the 16th of June. This weekend, the Pope was back where he loves to be, out and about with the people. On Saturday, tens of thousands of Italian volunteers packed St. Peter's Square. Francis greeted children with disabilities from his Pope-mobile, and he got out and just went over to say hello to them. Then Sunday, he visited a Rome neighborhood, which is home to a Catholic organization, the Sant'Egidio community. The group helps elderly, poor, and immigrants. Pope Francis visited the ancient Basilica of Santa Maria. He said a society that doesn't care for the elderly or young people is without a future and without hope. Over the weekend, he also announced that he will be traveling to Albania, adding to a growing list of planned papal trips. Our Alan Holdren is in Rome tonight. And Alan, tell us about the Pope's travel plans.
Over the weekend, Pope Francis announced that he will be traveling to Albania this fall. This isn't, of course, the first international trip that the Pope has made. He's also been to Brazil and to the Holy Land. These were two very significant moments in this short papacy. When he went to Brazil, he went for the World Youth Day celebrations with hundreds of thousands of young people from all over the world. Perhaps the most emblematic moment of that entire trip was celebrating the final Mass, the closing Mass of the celebration, with more than 1 million youth on Copacabana Beach. He's also been to the Holy Land. That trip took place less than a month ago. He was there at two famous walls, the separation wall between Bethlehem and Jerusalem, where he stopped for a prayer, and also the Wailing Wall, which of course is very important for Jews there in Jerusalem. He left a prayer there, which was the Our Father in Spanish. Now, the Holy Father also has other trips on the horizon. He's going to Korea this August for Asian Youth Day. He'll also be going to Sri Lanka and the Philippines this next January, first month of 2015. Now, for a person who doesn't particularly like to travel, the Pope is showing that he's willing to make the sacrifice, and it appears that he's been bitten by the travel bug. Back to you, Brian.
All right, Alan Holdren in Rome, and back here in the States, Common Core school curriculum has been a topic of debate, and that debate is now heating up. Earlier this month, Oklahoma became the third state to repeal Common Core education standards. Governor Mary Fallin says the federal government's attempt to influence state education policy is reason enough to abolish the guidelines in Oklahoma. The standards are adopted in more than 40 states, and here in the District of Columbia, they spell out the math and English skills that public school students should master at each grade level. Now, one education leader says Catholics should oppose Common Core. We're joined by Emmett McGroarty, the education director at American Principles Project. So, how are Catholic schools responding to this Common Core curriculum?
Well, I'll tell you, parents are finding out what's coming home in the backpack, and they realize that that their children are being subjected now to a dumbed-down curriculum. So parents are pushing back. Sadly, though, over 100 Catholic dioceses signed on to the Common Core in sort of a herd mentality, along with the 40 states that signed up for the Common Core.
Why do you think Catholics should say no to Common Core?
Well, Common Core locks children into a poor curriculum. Common Core is national standards for English and math. With respect to math, it ushers in a slowed progression that fails to prepare children for studies in science, technology, engineering, and math. It will not prepare them for admission to competitive public and private universities. By 8th grade, they'll be roughly 2 years behind their peers in high-performing states and high-performing countries.
You know, most people agree that we need to do something to improve our education system. What would you suggest as an alternative to this?
Well, Common Core is going down this path we've been going down progressively for the last 50 years of dumbing down education, getting away from classic literature and direct instruction math in favor of fuzzy math and informational texts, simpler texts. So what we need to do is reject that path and go back to the rich tradition that existed in America and certainly existed in Catholic schools. We need to return to our tradition.
Are there specific things in the Common Core curriculum that are objectionable, inappropriate for young children?
Well, there's two basic issues here. Now, the standards are age inappropriate for young children in that they require abstract thinking processes that children's minds just aren't formed yet for. So that's inappropriate. The major thing on literature is this de-emphasis of classic literature in favor of informational texts.
Okay. Emmett McGroarty with the American Principles Project. We appreciate you enlightening us on that and joining us tonight.
Thank you, Brian.
Up next, the newly crowned Miss USA 2014 talks about the role of faith in her life. And this weekend we celebrated Father's Day. We'll show you a video produced by Catholic Vote highlighting our dads. For Monday, June 16th, this is EWTN News Nightly. Thanks for watching. I'm Brian Patrick. The Miss USA competition may be the biggest and most popular beauty contest in the country, but what's the real message behind the pageant? Earlier today, our Wyatt Goolsby talked by satellite with the newly crowned Miss USA Nia Sanchez.
We're joined now by Nia Sanchez. First of all, congratulations, Nia. Tell us what it was like to be crowned Miss USA and what cause or issue are you going to promote as your platform?
Well, thank you so much for having me. Being crowned in that moment was just so surreal. I've been doing pageants for 5 years, and to be on the stage was an honor, and to actually be crowned Miss USA, I couldn't believe that my dreams were coming true. Now, for my cause and my platform, when I was living in Nevada, I worked with a women's shelter a lot to raise money, to bring awareness, but also teach stranger danger classes to the kids and self-defense classes to the women. And I really want to continue forward with that here in New York and across the U.S. I've had some sweet teenagers tweeting me saying, I practiced the move that I saw you show on TV. So I can't wait to really get more into that this year.
Nia, can you touch a little bit more on that? Because you yourself at one point in your life had spent time in a women's shelter.
Yes, I did. When my parents had decided that they wanted to separate, my mom had been a stay-at-home mom all that time, so had nowhere really to go. So we went into a women's shelter, and it was just a wonderful tool and resource for her to be able to get up on her own 2 feet. She was able to build a resume, get a job, and then we actually were able to, after a short amount of time, live on our own independently. So I love women's shelters for that reason. They can really give women the tools that it takes to be able to be more independent and get up on their own feet.
Absolutely. Well, tell me now about the benefits of holding a pageant like this or participating in it, because you know there are a lot of people, Nia, say it's 2014, the modern age, and so women should not necessarily be judged on their looks or how they look in a bathing suit. How do you sort of dispel the stereotypes about beauty pageants?
Well, a lot of the times I feel like people have those stereotypes because that's the only part of the pageant that they see. We actually go through interviews that are between 5 and 10 minutes long, getting to know the judges getting to know us, and they get to ask us questions, see if we can speak in front of a group of people and really know what we're about. So many pageant girls are very well-rounded, educated, and they like to get involved in their communities as well. So I feel like pageants are relevant because they really help give us a platform to express what is important to us, whether it's community service or maybe even school or something specific that we want to help influence others around us. And I think it's a really good women's empowerment type program.
Well, one other thing that's very important to a lot of people in general is faith. Has faith played a role in your life, or how has faith guided you?
Faith has played a huge role for me in the pageant world. I feel like there were times when I was really trying just to be what I thought the perfect pageant girl was. I had dyed my hair blonde and got a really dark spray tan. I was like, okay, this is what is right. But for me, I kind of took a step back, really came true to who I was. And then even on stage, I was praying the whole time. I just pray for peace and calm and confidence and declaring things. And I feel like it just helped me to know who I am better, to know where my value comes from, and to be more confident because I pull strength from my faith.
All very good values. Nia Sanchez, Miss USA 2014. Nia, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Wyatt. A beautiful woman of faith. The San Antonio Spurs are the 2014 NBA champions. The Spurs aren't known for superstar players like the Miami Heat's LeBron James, but their teamwork dealt Miami a 104-87 beating Sunday. They earned the respect of the Heat's head coach.
They played exquisite basketball this series, and in particular these last 3 games, and they were the better team.
Well, the Spurs' 5th NBA title in 15 years, their championship last night. The LA Kings and New York Rangers went into double overtime, battling for Hockey Stanley Cup. LA takes the cup home again. It was on parade through the streets of Los Angeles today. The Kings and their fans are celebrating the team's 2nd championship in 3 seasons. And World Cup soccer is well underway in Brazil, with the U.S. taking on Ghana in the opening game. They're playing right now. Germany beat Portugal 4-0 earlier today, sealing the deal early with 3 first-half goals. Looking back at some of the other big games for the weekend, the Netherlands crushed Spain 5-1 Friday. That was the highest-scoring game in the group phase so far. Costa Rica and Italy won their opening matches, as did Switzerland and France, and the Pope's home country of Argentina beat the Bosnian team 2-1 on Sunday. But tonight, fans of Team USA have their eye on Natal, Brazil, where they're minutes into the match with Ghana.
By no means is Ghana a bad team, but I think sometimes we underestimate them in a group like this, where you think you've got Portugal and Germany, and those are the big dogs.
Ghana has knocked the U.S. out of the previous 2 World Cups, so this is a high-stakes match. Well, EWTN News Nightly's Jason Calvi covered all the news from last week's Bishop Spring meeting in New Orleans, but he also came up with a list of the Bishop's favorite things. Take a look at this.
Your favorite movie?
Lord of the Rings.
Schindler's List.
On the waterfront.
Why is that?
Well, because of the acting and the priest.
Well, I'm a fan of Les Miserables.
Any favorite movie that you have?
No.
And any music that you particularly like?
Big band music.
I'm a classic music buff.
Favorite piece of music?
No. I kind of like Josh Groban and Andrea Bocelli both singing My Prayer.
Bible verse, I like Luke and the Magnificat of Mary.
Love thy neighbor as thyself.
My favorite is Philippians 2.
Though he was in the form of God,
Jesus did not deem equality with God
something to be grasped, but rather emptied himself,
taking on the form of a slave,
humbled himself, accepting death, even
death on the cross.
My favorite book, The Confessions of St. Augustine.
One that I'm reading now is a biography of Dwight Eisenhower.
Thomas Merton's New Seeds of Contemplation.
Anything?
Well, not really.
That's a great look at the bishops, a different side of them. Finally, we hope all of you dads had a good Father's Day on Sunday, and we leave you tonight with a tribute to fathers from a group called CatholicVote.org. Good night, and God bless you.